Ladies and gentlemen, good morning and welcome to the lecture 13. The title of the lecture is Defining the Problem of Research. The defining of research problem is a very important step in the research process. Why? Because if we have well defined our problem, it means we have understood our problem, and if we have been able to define our problem, it means we know the problem. And if we know the problem, then the research can be done systematically. And if we do not know the problem itself very well, then how do we expect that we proceed into the research comfortably? It is difficult. This is why of course, all the topics in this course or any course are important, but defining the problem of research has a special significance because then it is related to the understanding and clarity of the problem. If the doctor is not very clear about the disease of the patient, he has been unable to understand it, he has been unable to perceive it, then how can we expect that he can diagnose and write the prescription? And if the problem is understood, if the disease is clear and understood, then the diagnosis will also be very clear, and then the prescription would also be very clear. And this is true for research in any field, whether it is science or whether it is social science or any branch of science. So, in this context, first we shall be discussing what a research problem means, or simply what is a research problem. A research problem refers to some difficulty which a researcher experiences in the context of either a theoretical or practical situation and wants to obtain a solution for the same. So, a research problem requires that some conditions which are going to discuss below must be met, and this can be called the components of the research problem also. However, if these conditions or components are not in the research problem, then it is doubtful that the problem is a research problem and needs to be paid attention for research and have heavy expenditures. This is why we discuss it. The first condition is that there must be an individual or a group, society or a country, whatever it is, which has some difficulty with the problem. If suppose there is no problem to anybody, then in technical terms, this is not a research problem. Suppose 50 years ago, there was no problem of global warming. Warming has always been there. It is not a something which has happened now. It is a continuous process. But then that level of global warming, maybe 50 years ago, did not cause any problem to anybody or any group or any country. This is why then this was not a research problem. But in recent years, the global warming is threatening the very comfort of the people, the weather and everything. So now it has become a problem for the individual also, for the society also, for the country also. So it must be clear to you now that global warming was not a problem of research maybe 50 years ago, when it was not a threat to anybody. But once it has acquired the gigantic proportions and become a threat for the societies, individuals and countries, then it has become a research problem. Then there must be some individual or group which has some difficulty with the problem. And this is what I explained, that as long as the phenomenon, with the phenomenon nobody has any problem, it is not a research problem. But once it becomes a problem for individual, group, society or country, then it becomes a research problem. Further, there must be some objectives to be attained by this researching this problem. If there are no objectives, one wants nothing, then one cannot have it cannot qualify as a research problem. There must be objectives, and this is why when you do the research, your objectives would be taken very seriously. Then there must be alternative means or the courses of action for obtaining these objectives. If there is only one course of action, then what is the role of research? There is a problem, there is only one course of action, so let it happen. So there have to be more than one solutions to the problem at hand. Then there must remain some doubt in the researcher's mind with regard to the alternatives. Which alternatives is better, he does not know. And this question he has to seek answer from his research, that which of the possible alternatives would be the best solution for the problem. There must be some environment to which the difficulty persists, because it is very necessary for studying the research problem. Also, the research problem requires the researcher to find the best of the solutions, best of the alternative solutions. So, if there is, if a problem qualifies these conditions, then only we can say or we can observe that it is a research problem, otherwise no. Now we come to the selection of the problem. The research problem undertaken must be carefully selected. It's not a casual kind of thing that we read something in the newspaper, we read something in one of the article discussed with our colleagues, friends, and then we come to decide a research topic. It's not that. And even research topics are not just available like things in a shop, go and get from the shelf. No, it's not that. For the research problem, one has to be very careful. The problem must spring from the mind of the researcher, like a plant springing from own seed. Because the research, it has to come from the researcher minds as he presses his mind or thinks over the problems, and then it comes to his mind. This is why the research topics are not imposed. They are discussed. They are defined, and then a research problem is selected. However, there are certain points which a researcher should keep in his mind while selecting the research topic. Number one, the subject which is overdone should never be normally chosen. It will be a difficult task to throw any new light in such a case. What happens? People think that let us choose a topic which has been done by many people, and that would be easy, so that we can easily finish our MPhil or PhD or do our research. But then it is never advised. Why? Because research should not be repeated. Research is not a repetition of the work which has already been done. Research should be done where there has nobody done something. Either it is a totally new and fresh topic, or we are going to do research on some angle which has not been paid attention by the researchers who have done this. So it has to be kept in mind that the topics which has been overdone should not be preferred. Further, if we are going to select a topic just thinking that it would be easy to complete our research, then, and it has been already done by so many people from so many aspects, then what happens? It would have least academic market. Whereas those topics which are very new, which have not been done by many people, so if it is done, then what happens? It has an academic market, value and academic market. And if we are spending a few years of our youth and the sponsors money, maybe it is UGC or anybody else, then we should be, it is in our interest also and in the interest of the university and the UGC or any sponsoring agency, that we choose a topic which has not been done by, frequently done by many people. Further, we should not choose the controversial subjects, because if we choose controversial subjects, we should avoid it rather. I'm not telling that one should not choose, but it should be avoided, because if it is a controversial topic, then we are not going to get the data. For suppose we want to study the rumblings in the Saudi royal family, it becomes a controversial subject for us, and we will not have any access to the data, and our research may not be completed. Similarly, too narrow or too vague problem should be avoided, because of the same reasons that too narrow and too vague problems would be difficult to generate data. Further, the subject selected for research should be familiar and feasible, so that related research material or sources of research material are within one's reach. Further, for this purpose, an expert professor has to be consulted and literature surveys have to be done for this. Because if, yes, the topic is also very attractive, very good, but if the data is not accessible, then how can we complete the research? We will have to leave it in between. This by we should avoid choosing too narrow and too vague problems. Further, we should see to it that we have the necessary qualification and training. The researcher has necessary qualification and training. The cost involved and the time factor are also important. In the PhD and MPhil, students are given the scholarship for a limited period of time, and also there is limited period of time for finishing the research, completing the research. So one should keep into that mind. And further, the necessary qualification is necessary, because suppose if we have no training in economics or international trade or econometrics, and we start choosing the say suppose the 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 gravitational model in international trade between India and say Saudi Arabia, India and GCC, or we start working on the India's migrant workers in GCC countries, a gravitational approach, then those who have no training of this kind, for them it would be a problem. So, what is our background? That is very important for selecting the topic. The researcher should be accompanied with this background. The budget has to be checked, and also if there are expert teachers available to guide us, and further the selection of the problem must be preceded by a preliminary study, especially when the field of inquiry is relatively new. The problem has to, what is the necessity to define the problem? A problem clearly stated is a problem half solved. It will help to discriminate relevant and irrelevant data. A proper definition of research problem enables the researcher to remain on track. What data to be collected, primary, secondary, what characteristic or data are relevant to the study, what relations are to be explored, what techniques are to be used for this purpose. Such other questions crop up in mind of the researcher. It can be found through proper defining of the problem. Now we come to the techniques of defining a problem. How do we define a problem? These are following steps that we are going to discuss, and this way the problem would be defined. So the first thing that we have to take care of while defining the problem is the statement of the problem in a general way. The problem has to be stated in a broad general way, keeping in view either some scientific or intellectual interest. Further, a pilot survey has to be done to narrow down and phrase the problem in operational terms. In case there is some directive from any sponsoring authority or organizational authority, the problem can be stated accordingly. So, the first point was, or the first step was to 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 state the problem in a general way, so that anybody or the board which sits over it gets to know what is the problem. Then the second stage is, or the second step in defining the problem is understanding the nature of the problem. What is the nature of the problem? What is its origin? How did it originate? There must be a good discussion with those who have good knowledge of this problem. The environment within which the problem is to be studied and understood. If the patient does not tell the doctor about his symptoms in the beginning of the disease, then it means or she is hiding something from the doctor, and the the there will be problem in understanding the problem. Similarly, if suppose we are working on India-China relations, we have to understand the nature of the problem, origin of the problem. If we do not go to the origin of the problem, then we are not doing justice to the defining of the problem, or we will not be able to make ourselves also and other also understand the problem very clearly. So the problem has to be studied in its origin, and then from that one has to link the problem to understand it. The third stage is to survey the available literature. All available literature concerning the problem has to be surveyed, at least all those publications which are coming in the last few years on and around the topic has to be gone through, has to be consulted. It helps in finding the required data. It helps in procuring the materials. Further, it helps in finding the gap in the research. It also helps the researcher in selecting the conceptual framework. But if we are not doing the literature survey, how do we know that we will be able to complete this research in this problem or not? Because there are various problems which are too difficult. So, from the literature survey, if we find that no, I do not have so much of resources to study this problem, then one would leave it immediately and begin for the search of the other problem for research. But if he has not gone through the literature survey, he may or she may in fact land himself or herself in problem in future, because one does not know whether the data is available or not, the conceptual framework is available or not, or what are the problems in collection of the data and in various stages of the research. That is to be something which has to be again seriously taken. So this was the third part of the defining the technique of the defining of the problem. So first what we did, we stated the problem in a general way. The second, we tried to understand the problem for ourselves first, and then maybe for the board members. And then the third technique, the third part of the technique of defining the problem is the surveying of the available literature, which carries again a lot of importance, because without this we may land in problems and we shall not be able rather to define the problem very well. The fourth technique is, or the fourth step is, to develop ideas through discussions. In research, in intellectual pursuit of knowledge, discussion is very important, debate is very important. So, through debate and discussion, various new ideas can be developed. Also, the researcher must discuss the problem with his colleagues and others who have enough experience in this area. This is also known as experience survey. Further, the discussion should also include general approach, techniques, possible solutions, etc. So, like other stages, this is also very important. We will find that in our department or in our university, any of the university in India, we would find that there are research scholars who are senior to us. There are teachers who have put lot of effort in studying those problems, and we should go beyond our supervisors also, beyond our guide also, and consult all the researchers and also consult the teachers concerned, experts concerned. Even these days we have the idea of discussions through the computers, because when we find there that there are many questions which are being put, and anybody can reply to that. And of course, we cannot believe all the answers, but from that discussion, we can develop many ideas. Either it is manual or through it is the computers. So we can always develop ideas through discussions. We have to, when we discuss with our seniors and experts, then when we get to know many things which are original in nature, which they have encountered, the problems that they have encountered in their research. So that would give us lot of benefit. And of course, it is an important step in the direction of defining of the problem. And then suppose we need to rephrase the problem, we need to redefine the problem, then we would redefine the problem. This is why it is called defining and redefining of the problem. The problem has to be rephrased into a working proposition. The environment within which the problem would be studied is to be defined. Through rephrasing, the problem has to be made operationally viable and may help in the development of a working hypothesis. So, from the previous, that is the discussion with the experts, we may feel the requirement to redefine the problem. And it happens many times. Once we submit one submits one's synopsis for the research, it is discussed threadbare in the committee. And if from that discussion it is recommended that one should redefine the problem, it is not well defined, then we should not mind it. Rather, we should be thankful to the members that they have given enough time to ponder over my problem, and this time when one redefines the problem, all the limitations, all the everything which lacks would be fulfilled. That is called the redefining of the problem. So, the researcher, it is a defining and redefining of the problem. Once we are successfully able to define the problem, then our research pursuit would become smooth, because we have our boundaries, we have our limitations, and we know the problem, we understand the problem. And if we understand the problem, then it is very helpful in studying the problem or doing the research. And of course, the researcher must frankly admit to the limitations of the research that he is going to be made. He should not promise skies and stars. Rather, the researcher has to write that these are the limitations of my work, and I would be working under these limitations. Again, the suitability of data and time period, because the problem has many times we have to fix period of research. This is important. Otherwise, we shall not be able to complete our PhD or our research. because a research has to be done within fixed period, within fixed time. So considering the suitability of the time period, we have to select the period of study. If suppose somebody wants to study on, say, India Saudi Arabia trade, then he has to fix a period. Why? Because then he can manage it. He does not fix his period, then what would happen? He cannot study for the trade for say 50 years or 100 years. It is impossible. So what happens? We can fix that, okay, in the 21st century, or since Saudi Arabia has joined the WTO, any kind, but in fixing the period also, logical explanation is necessary why we are choosing that particular period. Hmm. Working on India Saudi Arabia relations, we can always say that I am going to study 2005 to 2025, 20 years of India Saudi Arabia trade, because Saudi Arabia joined WTO in 2005, and this is why our study begins from 2005 and it would go for up to 20 years, up to 2025. So there is a logical explanation for the choosing of the period also. And then one will find that there are many technical terms. There are many technical terms in the defining of the problem. These technical terms has to be explained clearly. Why? Because if our technical term is not, if the technical terms that we have used is not is not well, is not clear, then it may create confusion in the minds of others, especially those who are going to assess our research problem. So we have already discussed these techniques, how we should define the problem, and if this is adhered to in sincerity, then it is sure that we shall be able to define our problem perfectly. And if we have defined our problem well, then of course the research would also be smooth, and of course we will have very excellent conclusions and recommendations. Thank you very much.